Welcome to Star Bios, the podcast where we delve into the fascinating lives of iconic figures in entertainment, literature, and beyond. I'm your host, Casey Gold, and today we're going to explore the captivating life of F Scott Fitzgerald, one of the most celebrated authors of the 20th century. From his early days as a young wordsmith to his rise as the voice of the Jazz Age, Fitzgerald's story is a rich tapestry of literary ambition, personal struggle, and romance. Born on September 24, 1896, in St. Santer, Paul, Minnesota, Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald was the second of four children to Edward and Molly Fitzgerald. His father, a failed businessman, struggled to provide for his family, and the Fitzgeralds relied on the financial support of Molly's family, who were successful grocers. This complex web of family relationships and financial struggles would later influence Fitzgerald's writing, particularly in his portrayals of class and identity. As a child, Scott was fascinated by literature and poetry, and his parents encouraged his creative pursuits. He spent hours reading and writing, and his early stories and poems show a precocious talent for language and imagination. The Fitzgeralds lived in a modest house on Laurel Avenue, surrounded by the rolling hills and lakes of St. Paul. This idyllic setting would later inspire some of Fitzgerald's most nostalgic and romantic writings. In 1908, Scott began attending St. Paul Academy, where he excelled academically and developed a passion for football and theater. His teachers recognized his talent for writing, and he was soon contributing stories and poems to the school's literary magazine. After graduating from St. Paul Academy in 1913, Fitzgerald attended Princeton University, where he befriended future writers and intellectuals, including Edmund Wilson and John Peel Bishop. At Princeton, Fitzgerald's academic performance was uneven, but he thrived in the university's vibrant literary scene. He wrote for the Princeton Tiger, the school's humor magazine, and contributed to the Nassau Literary Review, which published his early stories and poems. However, his time at Princeton was cut short when he dropped out in 1917 to join the U.S. Army during World War I. Stationed in Montgomery, Alabama, Fitzgerald met Zelda Sayre, a beautiful and vivacious young woman who would become his wife and muse. Their whirlwind romance was marked by intense passion and creativity, with Scott drawing inspiration from Zelda's free-spirited nature and beauty. As they courted, Fitzgerald wrote some of his most romantic and expressive letters, which would later be published as The Love Letters of F. Scott Fitzgerald. These early years, marked by a mix of literary ambition, personal struggle, and romance, laid the foundation for Fitzgerald's future success. From the sun-drenched streets of St. Paul to the hallowed halls of Princeton, Scott Fitzgerald's early life was a rich tapestry of influences that would eventually give birth to some of the most iconic characters and stories of the 20th century. The historical context of Scott's early years was also significant, with the country on the brink of World War I and the social landscape changing rapidly. The old aristocracy was fading, and a new generation of Americans was emerging, eager to make their mark on the world. Fitzgerald's experiences during this time, including his time at Princeton and in the Army, would later influence his writing as he explored themes of class, identity, and the American dream. From his childhood in St. Paul to his time at Princeton and in the Army, Scott's early life was marked by a sense of wonder, curiosity, and creativity that would eventually propel him to literary stardom. The 1920s were a transformative period for Fitzgerald, marked by literary success, personal turmoil, and an insatiable appetite for the excesses of the Jazz Age. In 1920, he published his debut novel, This Side of Paradise, which became an overnight sensation, catapulting him to fame and fortune. The novel's themes of youth, rebellion, and the American dream resonated with a generation of young Americans who were eager to break free from the constraints of traditional society. Fitzgerald's literary star continued to rise with the publication of his short story collection, Tales of the Jazz Age, in 1922. This collection included some of his most famous stories, such as The Diamond as Big as the Ritz and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. These tales showcased Fitzgerald's unique voice, which blended elements of realism, symbolism, and fantasy, to create a distinctive narrative style. As Fitzgerald's literary reputation grew, so did his personal legend. He became known for his extravagant lifestyle, which included lavish parties, expensive cars, and a penchant for fine clothing and jewelry. His marriage to Zelda Sayre in 1920 was a highly publicized event, with the couple becoming one of the most glamorous and fashionable pairs of the era. The Fitzgeralds' whirlwind romance took them from New York to Paris, where they befriended other notable writers and artists, including Ernest Hemingway, Gertrude Stein, and Pablo Picasso. This expatriate community provided a fertile ground for creative experimentation and innovation, with Fitzgerald drawing inspiration from the city's vibrant artistic scene. In 1925, Fitzgerald published The Great Gatsby, which many consider his masterpiece. Set in the fictional towns of West Egg and East Egg on Long Island, the novel is a haunting tale of love, greed, and the corrupting influence of wealth. Through the eyes of Nick Carraway, the novel's narrator, Fitzgerald explores themes of class, identity, and the American dream, which were central to his work. The Roaring Twenties were also a time of great personal turmoil for Fitzgerald. His marriage to Zelda was marked by infidelity, excessive drinking, and mental health issues, which would eventually take a toll on their relationship. Despite these challenges, Fitzgerald continued to write prolifically, producing some of his most iconic works, including Tender is the Night and The Crack-Up. As we explore this pivotal period in Fitzgerald's life, it becomes clear that his experiences during the 1920s had a profound impact on his writing and worldview. From the glittering excesses of the Jazz Age to the personal struggles he faced, Fitzgerald's work continues to captivate readers with its timeless themes and haunting beauty. The 1930s were a difficult period for Fitzgerald, as he struggled with financial troubles, personal demons, and a declining literary reputation. His marriage to Zelda was all but over, and her mental health issues had become a major concern. In 1932, Zelda suffered a breakdown and was hospitalized, marking the beginning of a long and arduous journey towards recovery. Despite these challenges, Fitzgerald continued to write, producing some of his most introspective and autobiographical works, including the Crack-Up essays, which were published in Esquire magazine in 1936. These essays offer a candid and often brutal assessment of his own life, loves, and literary career, providing a unique glimpse into the mind of a writer struggling to come to terms with his own decline. In 1937, Fitzgerald moved to Hollywood, where he worked as a screenwriter for MGM Studios, earning a significant income but feeling unfulfilled creatively. He began working on his final novel, The Last Tycoon, which was inspired by the life of Irving Thalberg, a prominent film producer. The novel is a haunting and poignant tale of love, power, and corruption, set against the backdrop of the Hollywood studio system. Fitzgerald's time in Hollywood was marked by a series of personal struggles, including his affair with columnist Sheila Graham, who would become his companion until his death. Despite his efforts to revive his literary career, Fitzgerald's health began to decline, and he suffered from a series of heart attacks and other ailments. In 1940, Fitzgerald died suddenly at the age of 44, leaving behind an unfinished manuscript for The Last Tycoon and a legacy as one of the most celebrated authors of the 20th century. His death marked the end of an era, not just for Fitzgerald but for the Jazz Age itself, which had been his muse and inspiration throughout his career. As we reflect on F. Scott Fitzgerald's life and work, it becomes clear that his experiences during the final years of his life had a profound impact on his writing and worldview. From the decline of his literary reputation to the personal struggles he faced, Fitzgerald's work continues to captivate readers with its timeless themes and haunting beauty. In conclusion, F. Scott Fitzgerald's life was a testament to the power of creativity, perseverance, and the human spirit. Through his works, we are transported to a world of wonder, excess, and tragedy, where the boundaries between reality and fiction blur. As we bid farewell to this remarkable writer, we are reminded of the enduring legacy he left behind, a legacy that continues to inspire and captivate readers to this day. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the captivating life of F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's all for today's Star Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Casey Gold, reminding you to keep shooting for the stars.